Good afternoon, Dr. Kuyakik. So welcome everyone to this afternoon session. We will start at 2:05. In the meantime, there are a few reminders being flashed. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. So this is our afternoon session. Before we begin this afternoon session on best practices in ecological education and culture, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Trinket Constantino, and I am a faculty member of the Department of Biology here at the Ateneo de Manila University. And I'm happy to serve as moderator to the 4 research paper presentations for this afternoon. So before we start, can I have a virtual thumbs up or round of applause from everyone just to signify your presence this afternoon? Yeah. So thank you very much to everyone for being here. So just a reminder, after each presentation, we will have a few minutes to give the audience members time to ask questions or maybe comment or share related experiences. So please take note of any you might have as we listen to each speaker. As I said, we have 4 presentations this afternoon, and I am sure we're all looking forward to listening to our speakers and learning from their experiences with their best practices in ecological education and culture. So without further delay, let's begin with our first presentation by Dr. Joseph G. Campang of the IBS at the University of the Philippines in Los Baños. Dr. Campang, I see you're here. Please feel free to start and share your presentation when you are ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joseph G. Campang. I am just a assistant professor, not yet a doctor, from the Institute of Biological Sciences of UP Los Baños. So I will be presenting a paper entitled Incorporating Ecology Concepts in the General Education course. This is the outline of my presentation. I'll be presenting the introduction, which is divided into several parts, including the Science 11 as a GE course, how the curriculum is designed to promote EEC and shift to remote learning. Then I will discuss some of the activities conducted in Science 11, the importance of ecology-related activities, and lastly, summary and conclusion. For the introduction, Science 11 is a 3-unit course offered in the University of the Philippines system and has a course title Living Systems, Concepts, and Dynamics. The course aims to expand the knowledge of the students on living systems, factors affecting it, and the various processes and interrelationships that are simultaneously occurring within it. Develop a deeper understanding of how human actions as part of living systems affect the environment. And lastly, it is expected that students will develop an appreciation of the study of living systems as a mix of various fields, both from the perspectives of natural sciences and through the lenses of the social sciences. Now, Science 11 is one of the general education or GE courses being offered in the University of the Philippines system. The GE courses were included in the curriculum of the students to develop leadership characterized by integrity and honor, excellence, and public service. The GE courses serve as foundation that will broaden intellectual and cultural horizons, hone critical and creative thinking, develop a passion for learning and scholarship, cultivate a high sense of moral and intellectual integrity, and foster a commitment to nationalism and justice. As I have mentioned in the previous slide, the curriculum of the UP students include taking GE courses. Now, the attributes that we want to be embodied by a GE student includes integrity, scholarship, broad intellectual and cultural horizons, and nationalism. So the UP formulated interdisciplinary curriculum involving humanities, social sciences, and philosophy, and science and mathematics. Focus of courses singly and in combination on developing an appreciation for the foundational disciplines, the interconnections among them, and their continuing relevance in understanding and dealing with complex problems confronting individuals and communities and the nation and the world as a whole. Individual GE courses have a specific disciplinary grounding. Science 11's focus is on ecology, environmental biology, and environmental science. There are GE courses with grounding or focus on other fields such as microbiology and even math and social sciences. It is expected that students will develop a holistic and integrative understanding of key concepts and principles within and across disciplines. Even before the pandemic, the UP is already envisioning transition to blended learning, wherein some of the courses can be taught remotely. But COVID-19 happened and this transition was hastened. Because due to COVID-19, some of the measures taken by the Philippine government to control the spread of the virus include imposition of community quarantines, lockdowns, and curfew. The community quarantine instructed the people to stay at home, to close schools and universities, along with non-essential business establishments, public transportation facilities, and churches. So the higher education institutions have also had to adjust to a new situation wherein face-to-face interaction and mass gatherings are prohibited. As a result, teachers and administrators were put to task of redesigning course syllabi and requirements as we shifted to alternative or remote teaching modalities. In order to continue to deliver education and sustain the continuation of the student academic progress, teaching and learning activities were shifted to remote learning. So in the face-to-face interaction, we all know that the teacher and the learners meet in a physical classroom at a set time every week. In remote learning, the teacher and the learners are physically or geographically separated, and remote learning is not always or not entirely the same with online learning because remote learning may or may not be online. It means to say that remote learning is synonymous with distance education, while fully online learning is just one type of remote learning. So the remote learning approach offers numerous advantages, such as it accommodates different learning styles and schedules, use of various educational resources such as paper, video, and audio as instructional tools. It allows use of different communication methods such as email, teleconference, video conference, and instant messaging, and it supports self-directed and self-paced learning style. In Science 11, activities were redesigned to be student-directed that let the learners explore the environment around them and into ecological principles. So this slide shows the Zoom screenshot of faculty members redesigning the Science 11. And now, what are some of the activities in Science 11 designed to teach ecology and remote learning? So one is documenting oral traditions linked with living systems and describing how these were translated into art. Examples are songs, practices, and dance. So the title of the activity is Oral Tradition of Indigenous People Infographic. In this activity, a group of students will choose one indigenous group of people from Philippine Islands and select one oral tradition that reflects their view of living systems. Then, they will prepare an infographic or visual representation of the oral tradition discussing how such indigenous people view living systems. These are the examples of the outputs of the students. The first one is about Hudhod, an oral tradition of the Ifugao people. Hudhod is actually a chant reflecting the view of Ifugao people in being unison with nature, worshiping, family solidarity, and being socially responsible. The second one is about the epic song Darangan of Maranao. Darangan is said to play a substantial role in preserving culture of Maranao in terms of their livelihood, courtship or partnership, heroism, supernaturalism, etc. And then the third one is about the Tudom of the Madobo tribe. Tudom contains rhymes and rhythm that serve as a way of communication with a higher being and invoking spirits to ask for help during dire situations. Another activity is the recipe-based learning activities on food webs and food chains, which strengthen students' understanding of cycles and patterns in ecosystem with the activity titled Secret Recipe Diagram. In this activity, students will be given a recipe of chocolate chip cookies and students will determine the organisms that make the production of these cookies possible. They will list down the organisms that are the source of the ingredients for the cookie recipe. They will show the feeding relationships existing between these organisms by making as many food chains as they can think of, and they will connect these food chains together in the form of a food web. This shows the output of one student. The student was able to identify the organisms for cookie ingredients. In each ingredient, there is a corresponding organism. After identifying the organisms from the ingredients, the students must create food chains out of them to visualize how the energy from the organism will be transferred to them. In this manner, the student learns what are the necessary components of a food chain, like the organisms and the arrows. It is emphasized that the direction of the arrows must depict the transfer of energy. The students will then connect the food chains to form a food web. In this manner, it helps the students to understand the difference between food chain and food web, how they are made, and what do these signify. Another activity is documenting patterns observed in nature and giving ecology-based explanations for the phenomena. The activity is entitled Pattern Terrestre Creative Documentation. So in this activity, students have to look around their house or in their backyard for patterns in living systems, examples, plant, animal, or fungi. They will choose at least 5 patterns and create a Pinterest-like entry. If they have access and Pinterest account, they may create a separate board for this and pin their photos. If they do not have an account for Pinterest, they may draw or simply take pictures of the patterns. They have to include a description of the pattern and how they think it helps the organism. Lastly, they have to answer the following questions to help in understanding the lesson. Examples, are these due to random events and chances? Could adaptation and evolution influence such patterns? And what are some genetic principles and biophysical laws that govern these patterns? One example of the output by the students is the circular arrangement of leaves to help the plant to maximize the exposure to sunlight. Another one is the spiral arrangement of sunflower seeds to help optimize the number of seeds at the center of the flower. In this output, the students showed the unique patterns in the fingerprints of humans, which can be useful for identification. And in this one, the student showed the symmetrical pattern in butterfly, in which the student explained that it can help with the balance. Now, why are these ecology-related activities important? These are mainly for better understanding of the interaction of the environmental components, will serve as a foundation for deeper comprehension of the population dynamics. Population dynamics will be the next lesson after these activities. And lastly, so the students will be more effective communicators of the state of the ecosystem. So for the summary and conclusion, Science 11 is expected to expand the knowledge of the students on the living systems, the factors affecting it, and the processes and interrelationships. The objective of Science 11 as a GE course is to develop leadership characterized by integrity and honor, excellence, and public service. In promoting EEC, activities are designed in a sense that students will develop a holistic and integrative understanding of key concepts and principles within and across disciplines. Shift to remote learning resulted to redesigning of activities to let the students explore the environment around them and relate it to ecological principles. Examples of activities assigned to students include documenting oral traditions, describing perspectives on living systems, making a diagram of food chain and food web out of a recipe, describing the patterns observed in nature. These activities resulted to better understanding of interaction of the environmental components and deeper comprehension of population dynamics. And lastly, better understanding of ecological concepts will help the students communicate better the state of the ecosystem to the future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kampang. So that was a very interesting presentation and very interesting activities that you had shared with us. I'm sure most of us in the audience have have gotten a lot of ideas from your presentation. So may I ask the audience if you have any questions for Mr. Kampang, or if there is anything you would want to share? Please feel free to unmute and open your videos, or maybe if you prefer, ask in the chat if you have any questions. maybe people are still shy to ask questions. Mr. Kampang, I do have a few questions. So, your Sci 11, it was started just during this pandemic, or were you offering it even before the pandemic?
Uh, Professor Constantino, right? Before the K to 12 curriculum, the course is actually entitled Net Sci-Fi with a course title Environmental Biology. And then after the imposition of the K to 12, this was redesigned and the course title was changed to Sci 11. So this is to cater to set of students with more advanced background from the K to 12 curriculum.
So it's offered to students of all backgrounds, of any all majors for
Yes.
university.
Actually, in the UP system, ma'am, any students or any program or background of the students can actually take this course, but this is highly discouraged to be taken by the BS biology students because there are many lessons which are overlapping with their courses in their program. But
So
they
it's
can still
catered-
actually take it
yes.
if they really want.
All right. So how has the reception been? Because I saw the activities are very interesting. And is there a way that your students can maybe share this beyond the classroom? Are they encouraged to share this beyond the classroom, or to other people in the community maybe?
That's a good suggestion or comment, but we haven't done that yet because we are still in the online mode of remote teaching delivery of this course. So their outputs are just in our course sites like Canvas or Google Classroom. We haven't presented it yet to the community or in public.
Thank you. So there is a question here through the chat. Thank you for the informative and interesting presentation. How do the teachers assess the performance of the students?
For every activity, we actually give a scoring rubric to the students. We give points to content and to of course to the creativity. So those rubrics are specific enough so that the students will know how they will be graded in their outputs.
So as to follow up to that, is that the entirety of their grade, it's all based on these activities? You don't have the traditional exams anymore? Or?
This course, Science 11, consists of 9 modules. And then for every module, there are actually a pool of activities that you can conduct in your class. There can be 1 activity per module or 2 activities or 3 activities. So depending on the choice of the faculty or depending on the agreement with the class. In my case, in my class, I normally only conduct 1 activity per module, and then every after 3 module, there will be summative assessment. There will be like a quiz or an assessment like essay, something like that.
I thank you for answering that question. There's a second question from the chat here from our audience. Hi, what are some of the resistance and challenges students experience in learning science online, especially when concepts need to be explained in detail and most of the time through empirical methods?
Well, it's really challenging to deliver the course remotely or online. There are really some concepts that became vague in terms of the understanding of the students. So what I just do is that every after the submission of the activity, I conduct online synchronous session with my students, I asked them what are the vague concepts or vague part of the lessons or part of the lessons that they don't understand well, so that I can elaborate more on that. Presenting more pictures, diagrams, and videos during online synchronous session is also recommended, so that they can understand well the lesson. Actually, I have experience in my class that I rarely conduct online synchronous session. I just conduct it every after 3 modules. But then I receive a feedback from my students that they really miss conducting more online synchronous session. That's why in the past few semesters, I already practicing one online synchronous session every after one asynchronous session of the module. So more often, online synchronous session is also recommended or encouraged. Although the attendance is not required, but actually our session is recorded, so they may still watch it or rewatch it if they want to.
So I think I can relate to that, how significant synchronous sessions are. Especially maybe going face to face. I suppose you're thinking of redesigning it again so that it's also applicable not only for online sessions but also for the back to the classroom on-site sessions. So if I think there are no more questions from the audience. Thank you very much, Mr. Kampang, for that very interesting presentation. We will move on now to our second presenter. So our second presenter is Professor Charina Gracia B. Banaay, and she is also from the University of the Philippines at Los Baños. Dr. Banaay, you have the floor.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to share my screen. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we are able to see it.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon once again to everyone. I'm Charina Gracia B. Banaay, and on behalf of the whole Environmental Biology Division of IBS UPLB, I'm here to present our experiences on updating our undergraduate ecology curriculum. So this presentation entitled Blended, Relevant, and Upskilled, Jumpstarting the Redesign of an Undergraduate Ecology Curriculum would have 4 sections. So I'll start with a brief introduction about the urgency and emerging disciplines. Then I'll move on to the framework that we used for the redesign called 4DEE. And next, the development, making our courses blended, increasing the relevance of courses and upskilling our students. And lastly, on to the conclusions, looking back and looking forward. Okay, so we've all been through a lot, no, for the past 2.5 years. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought health to the forefront of the international research and development agenda once more. It seems that we have not learned from the epidemics and pandemics of the past. We need to remember that health in its totality must always be a priority, and this includes health of our ecosystems, communities, individuals, and the planet as a whole. The close relationship between the health of our environment and the health of societies has been established, and we know that healthy ecosystems promote healthy societies. In addition, the pandemic has catalyzed the transformation of the education landscape. Although perhaps many universities have been planning for the shift to blended learning, the pandemic has forced us to shift immediately. New instructional modalities have become necessary, and we all need to adapt. Otherwise, no, we might perish. So if the core characteristic of science is that it is never settled, meaning it keeps on changing, then we who are strongly dependent on science must also adapt to the challenges and changes occurring around us. So to keep up with the demands of the times, we need to rethink, redesign, and retool ourselves in terms of the type and quality of education we deliver to our students. So now let me introduce you to a new educational framework that was published in 2019, just before the pandemic. But it was actually presented in November 2018. It is called the Four-Dimensional Ecological Education Framework, or 4DEE for short. It was presented and endorsed by the Ecological Society of America. This society is actually one of the first ever ecological societies. It was founded in 1915 when ecology as a discipline is still in its infancy. ESA is currently the largest community of professional ecologists, and it was founded by Victor Ernest Shelford, of the Shelford's Law of Tolerance. Okay, so the 4DEE framework consists of 4 dimensions. That's why it's 4D, 4 dimensions of ecological learning, namely, first, the core concepts or core ecological concepts consisting of the hierarchy of ecology from individual to biosphere. Second would be ecology practices, referring to relevant skills that students should have. The third would be human-environment interactions, referring to ways that humans and nature affect each other. And lastly, number 4, cross-cutting themes that include various topics that are fundamental to ecology, such as systems thinking, spatial and temporal scales, including evolution. Some specific topics covered under each dimension are as follows. In CEC, this includes the ecology at different levels of organization, from organisms to the biosphere. EP includes natural history, fieldwork, quantitative reasoning, computational thinking, designing and critiquing investigations, and working collaboratively. No, so you'll see these are soft skills, no? Especially this collaborative work. And then human environment interactions include human dependence on the environment, human accelerated environmental change, how humans shape and manage resources, ecosystems, and environment, and ethical dimensions. And lastly, cross-cutting themes include structure and function relationships, pathways and transformations of matter and energy, systems thinking, and spatial and temporal scales. Okay. Since its inception in 2018 during the ESA conference, several references have commented on the advantages of using the 4DEE framework, including the following. First, it is multidimensional. So it allows the integration of various ways of thinking and doing ecology with teaching big ideas in the discipline. Second, it elevates the human environment dimension. So it is integrated in ecology, and it's not just included as an addendum. That means it's able to highlight the relevance of ecology to human welfare. The third is innovation. It provides a platform for innovations in research and practice at different scales and contexts. And finally, it's endorsed by those in the profession who understand best the needs of the discipline. ESA has actually outlined a way to use the 4DEE framework to transform a course or a specific lesson. But what we did in the environmental biology division in UPLB is to start at a bigger scale. So we went from the top to the bottom. So we looked at the whole ecology undergraduate program first. And then we assessed the current program for coverage of each of the 4 dimensions mentioned in the framework. We noted existing 2D, 3D or 4D integration in the program. It's already there. We just need to beef it up. Then we decided which core topic we will focus on to maximize the multi-dimensional coverage of the program. So we decided to start with offering 5 new courses and some additional topics, to existing courses. These 5 new courses are not yet instituted. No, we just offer them as a general special topics course. During the last 2 years of online teaching and learning, so that we can implement the courses quickly. In this way, we can have a sort of dry run, for the courses even before we propose their institution. So we have 5 new courses. That's ecology and planetary health. This is planetary health is a new discipline, an emerging discipline. We have ecosystem services and climate change, looking at, of course, ecosystem services, resource use, valuation, adaptation, and mitigation of climate change effects. Then we have fundamentals of aeroecology. This is also a new field or area of study, which looks at life of organisms in the air. And this includes also dispersion of microorganisms in the air, which is very much relevant to what's happening now. Then we also have quantitative ecology, which looks at ecological data presentation, analysis, and interpretation, which is very important, especially if you have big data. Then we have population ecology, looking at structure, dynamics, and interactions. And finally, additional topics in existing courses, such as systems ecology, ecological modeling, and environmental justice. So here is our evaluation. The existing program over here on the left column is actually already strong, but in terms of the core ecological concepts, it's complete. However, it lacks a little bit about discussions on the landscape and biosphere level. So that's what the new courses address, like planetary health, ecosystem services, and climate change would address issues at the biosphere level. And then aeroecology and population ecology would address issues at the landscape level and a few at the biosphere level. Now, in terms of ecology practice, the existing program is also strong, but it lacks a bit on quantitative reasoning and computational thinking. So a dedicated course on quantitative ecology and some of the topics on pop eco would be a good courses that can address the gap. And then for human environment interactions, we see that the course is also strong because we always incorporate human environment interactions in several courses, but we need to elevate the discussion. And it also lacks the ethics part. So for that part, most of the courses, except for quantitative eco, would address that. Now, in terms of cross-cutting themes, the is adequate already, so we don't need to do anything about it. So in addition, the added topics in some of the existing courses, ecological modeling would answer the ecology practice, and environmental justice would answer the lack on the ethics part in the human environment interactions. So as you can see, the 5 courses here, plus the additional topics, actually mapped out well against the 4DEE framework and strengthen the multidimensional coverage of the program. So in conclusion, we saw that 4DEE framework is a useful tool for assessing and redesigning ecological education at different levels. We used it at the program level, but it can also be used at the course and lesson level. Crafting new courses and offering it as special topics serves as a good dry run because we're able to implement it at once without going through all the hassle of instituting a new course. And finally, moving forward, we continue to redesign for blended learning to align with current educational schemes and to transform courses and lessons to 4D in the near future. So these are some references used for this presentation. If you want to look into the 4DEE framework more closely, you can go to the website of ESA, here the 5th reference, or you can just Google ESA 4DEE. That's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, Dr. Banaay. That was also a very interesting look at the specializations at the for ecology majors. Again, if there are any questions or comments from the audience, please feel free to unmute yourself and turn on your videos or to type your questions at the chat. How has the reception, ma'am, been from the students regarding these new courses when they took them up as special topics?
Yeah, it was good so far. We had good feedback from those taking actually taking all the courses, like in the planetary health course, because it's really a holistic view of how health is influenced by the ecology in our surroundings. And also yung quantitative ecology, we thought it would be difficult for the students, but they find it really useful because they're able to use it at once in their theses. So the reception is good.
So most of the students who took these topics are in their junior or senior years?
Yes,
already.
junior and senior students who are already majoring in specific fields like ecology.
So I guess they were able to apply the concepts they had learned already.
Yes, yes.
So are there any questions from the audience, please? Dr. Delocado?
Hello, thank you, ma'am. Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Bana. I thank you for your presentation. I appreciate the the synchronizing of courses, given that they're within the same thematic area, so that um, mapping them allows for greater continuity of the topics and more holistic learning experience for the students. My question is, I think it's a simple one. How often, or from your projections or from your planning, when would you have an evaluation of this course map that you have?
Usually in the university, we evaluate the program every 5 years. So that would allow us to have a 5-year cohort from which we can get feedback. And then from the feedback, then we can make adjustments in the course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Delocado. Are there any more questions or comments? Okay, so thank you very much again, Dr. Banay. I think we're all digesting, and thank you for the very relevant references that you had shared with us also.
Thank you.
Okay, for our next speaker, we have Dr. Nurul Hidayat Abraman from the University Kebangsaan, Malaysia, and she will be talking about it from a law point of view. So I will be the one sharing your presentation. Dr. Nurul, please let me know
Yes.
if it's okay.
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'll be discussing about the law and policies proposed or concerning of early childhood development on climate change, overview of selected countries in Asia Pacific region. So I'll be looking at another perspective, which is from the law perspective. So next slide, please. So climate change, it threatens the implementation of children's fundamental rights and simultaneously thwarts their life development potential. So therefore, efforts to combat climate change from perspective of children's rights are supported by Goal 13.3 of the SDG 2030. So among others, the objective are to improve education, awareness raising, human institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning. So basically, what goal 13 of SDG try to target is to educate children about climate change. So equipping children with climate change education allow them to develop an adaptive capacity to address the future challenges. However, what we have today in current world, the education system is still pending a solution to intensely address the gravity of climate crisis. So I'm not going to explain to you what is climate change. All of you know about it. Okay, so next slide, please. So the impact of climate change, basically, it will be very devastating for natural and also human system. It has existential threat to human civilization, whether it's children or adult. Adversely influence children's healthy growth, development, and also well-being. So children are often severely affected by climate conflicts or weather-related disaster because they are the vulnerable group. Climate change, therefore, is not an exaggeration to be considered as one of the children's rights crisis. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the impacts of climate change on children's rights. So it can threaten the children's physical and mental well-being. It can expand the scope of infectious disease, like further amplifying whatever threat that we have. So the availability of the clean air, water, nutritious food, it can increase air pollution, so the children will suffer from respiratory diseases such as asthma, bronchitis, severe respiratory distress in bad air condition. So it also can contaminated water, which will be the primary cause of malnutrition and also diarrheal disease. So the surface that temperature will rise, an increase in replication can cause pathogens such as protozoa, bacteria, and viruses in water. So basically, it will impact your health. Children also will suffer from heat stress or hypothermia, and then it can cause children to miss or drop school, and also other childhood activities. It can also cause extra stress on the pregnant mother and also fetus. So basically, fetus also considered, they also have a rights, okay, to have a healthy life throughout from the mother's and then heat rash, heat-related cramps, diarrhea, exhaustion, dehydration, and also stroke. So ultimately, climate change also can cause death. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the environmental conditions will not be safe for children to live, and it will have a massive impact on their life as a whole. So climate change will reduce climate resilient mechanism and adaptive capacity, increasing their vulnerability to climate and environmental hazard. So the impact will it will impact the implementation of their fundamental rights, for example, right to health, education, expression, association, and also rights to make decision. So as a whole, children's rights to development will be violated. Okay, next slide. Okay, so it is found that there is an explicit link between children's role in fighting climate change and its impact. The SDG 2030 recognized that the early childhood is a crucial frame time whereby all children should be given access to lifelong learning opportunities, which can help them to acquire knowledge and also skills to implement their participation rights in society and discharge their duty as a critical agent of change. So Goal 13 refers to climate change action with 5 defined targets and also 8 indicators. The target is basically to build knowledge and capacity to meet climate change. Okay, next slide. So the main aim is to raise the number of government incorporating mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning into primary, secondary, and tertiary curricula. So basically, we want to include climate change education since early childhood. Methods can be either via teachers' education, syllabus, student assessment, and integration into national education policies. So it must be drafted for children and youth to play their fair roles in contributing to SDG 2030. Okay, next slide. Why do children need to get involved? According to the Brundtland Report 1987, or known as Our Common Future, sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So basically, the sustainability theory is for adults, for us, for the current community to enjoy our life, to enjoy the development thing. And in the same time, we want to preserve the same right for our generation. So basically, the future generation also must have a fair role, must have an opportunity to express their opinion and get involved in decision making if it's related to their future. So the link between SDG 2030 and children as one of the beneficiaries, and they are also entrusted as agent of change in the current SDG 2030. Okay, next slide. Children to contribute and participate actively in decision making on matters that impact their life. Children must be occupied with knowledge and essential data before their personal opinions and experiences can be considered by adults. Hence, education on climate change becomes significant. Target 13.3 The target 13.3 is also supported by goal 4 of SDG 2030, which explain about quality education, where target 4.7 mentioned about all learners must acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development by 2030 through many channels, including education for sustainable development and lifestyle. Therefore, education on climate change will form the foundation of social transformation to protect the world and its inhabitants. So indirectly, it means that when I'm talking about the link between SDG and also climate change and also children roles, what we have in goal 13.3 and also goal 4 of SDG, they are supporting early childhood education on climate change. So that's why we have to promote climate change education since early childhood. Okay, next slide, please. So the research methodology of this paper is pure legal research using a qualitative approach. All the primary and secondary data were collected through library studies and using publicly available data, namely the internet, and all pieces of information are analyzed critically using the content analysis method. Okay, so the analysis and discussion. Southeast Asia is one of the most disaster-affected regions with 85% of the climate-related disaster risk. So we have a lot of children here in Southeast Asia, and we are also impacted very badly because of climate change. Therefore, it is important for us to research on laws and policies that have been applied through Southeast Asia region. Okay, next slide. So in Australia, what we have Climate Change Act 2017 and also Climate Change Adaptation Plan Victoria 2017-2020, where Victoria, Australia was one of the world's first jurisdiction to pass a net zero emission target with the Climate Change Act 2017 that set a robust foundation for future climate resilience with the action under Victoria Climate Change Adaptation Plan 2017-2020. So I'm not going to explain everything here, but what we have in Australia, we have laws and also we have policies which encourage education on climate change. We have here Climate Change Adaptation Plan, we have Education and Training Climate Change Adaptation Action Plan and for 2022 until 2026, and then we have the Victorian Early Years Learning and Development Framework, where it incorporates climate change adaptation into decision-making process and practices. It prepares students to understand climate change impact on them and their world through their curricula. And then there are also cases that have been decided by court saying that the minister owes a duty of care for the environment to Australian children who might suffer potential catastrophic harm from the climate change implications. So because of this, the government must have think about something how to encourage climate change education since early childhood. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then in South Korea, we have the plan for green growth education, new curriculum, the green growth program, where all of these program is a comprehensive education system that aims for sustainable development and focuses on environmental, economic, and social problems such as climate change. Objective is to activate the green growth policy by including it in the education syllabus at elementary, middle, and also high school. Understanding of earth environment, awareness of environmental issues, including climate change, global warming, green growth, sustainable life, and so on. So we also have other laws like Environmental Pollution Prevention Act, and as what I have been listed there. All right, then next slide. In Bhutan, the Constitution of Bhutan, Article 5.1 said, emphasize the benefits of future generation to be sustained. So the law protects the children's rights for their rights to be sustained. It stated that every Bhutanese is a trustee of the kingdom's natural resources and environment for the benefit of the present and future generation. So it emphasized on the rights of our children to live a healthy life, to live a secure and safe life. So, and it is the fundamental duty of every citizen to contribute to the protection of the natural environment, conservation of the rich biodiversity of Bhutan, and so on. So then also, next one, we have climate change policy of the Kingdom of Bhutan. One of its many objectives is to raise community awareness and understanding of climate change. So the policy is to create awareness and understanding about climate change since early childhood. And then they have also with in Bhutan, the Gross National Happiness 2030. The index stated under Article 9 of the Constitution is meant to measure society collective happiness and well-being. So the 4 pillars of the GNH is sustainable and equitable socio-economic development, environmental conservation, preservation, and promotion culture and good governance. They also have sustainable education introduced at all levels of educations, and also Green School Initiative, where it is an initiative teaches value and philosophy to the students to reflect in their daily life activities of recycling materials and waste segregating at household level. And then we have in New Zealand a few other policies, a few other laws, such as climate change response, zero carbon amendment, where it set out and targets and other plans and measures to keep the country on track to deliver on its climate commitment. And then they have the Maita Foundation, where it provides environmental education in English and also in the Maori languages. More than 100,000 young people become active participants of the program. And then since early childhood. And then they have the $5 million Sustainability Contestable Fund, where the program targets to support schools to reduce their environmental impact, to improve their operational efficiency, to supply new teaching and learning resources, and so on. And they have website. They also have the National Communication Report. The Ministry for the Environment also is funding activities such as Science Learning Hub. Well, basically, the whole country is supporting the early childhood education to aware their children about climate change impact. Okay, next we have Japan. There are few programs here, which is the United Nations Decade on Education for Sustainable Development, the United Nations Decade on Education for Sustainable Development Implementation, the National Course of Studies, Global Action Program, Basic Plan for the Promotion of Education, which revised every 5 years, and government to promote effort to increase UNESCO associated school as centers of promotion of ESD. Next one, we have India. In the 1986 National Policy on Education, it further emphasized environmental education. As a result, the Supreme Court of India made an environmental education as compulsory in 1991 and issued a directive in 2003 highlighting the need for it to be mainstream. The National Curriculum Framework in 2005, which is a landmark policy as it sought to reorient education and make it more relevant to students' life. It situated the teaching learning process in a social, cultural, and global context, reflecting education for sustainable development concept. In 2006, they have a national environment policy where it captures the spirit of sustainable development and reflect the global discourse on sustainable development and climate change. It looks at sustainable development as something that enhances humans' well-being. In addition, The policy also makes a compelling case for environmental education, emphasizing the need for environmental awareness and education to lead the desired behavioral change. All right. So as a conclusion, climate change is a global crisis that impacts all human mankind, including children. There are various negative impacts from a health, social, economic, and environmental point of view. Furthermore, the situation has a more crucial impact as it hinders children development rights implementation. So if we allow this situation to continue, the young generation will not have a bright chance to enjoy their life well if the issues of climate change is not adequately addressed. The situation will become even more acute to the point that it may result in severe damage to human health or involve the loss of life. Therefore, in looking for a solution in this critical issue, what UN has already developed, which is the SDG, is something that we must look into. So it is crucial for knowledge and skill in dealing with this global phenomena to be inserted into children's life, particularly as the effect can reach children's health and vitality. Besides directly affecting their safety and health condition, climate change can also influence their socio-economic status, stunting their life perspective and violating their fundamental rights. So this paper proposes that enforcement of the ECD, which is early childhood development on climate change, must be encouraged through legal implementation and cooperation between countries and community members to ensure that the young generation are ready to battle the crisis successfully. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nurul. You've given us a lot to think about and a very big challenge, but I'm sure all of us here in Southeast Asia, especially here in the Philippines, are very aware of how important your paper is promoting education in climate change, especially in early childhood. So we probably just have time for one question or one comment from the audience, if there are any. Okay, so it seems that everyone is still digesting all the examples that Dr. Nurul has said, and maybe this is something that we can pattern and model future programs in education for early childhood in our own communities. Thank you very much, Dr. Nurul.
Thank you.
Okay, so for our last presenter for today, for our last presentation for today, we have Mr. Danesto Anasio, also from the University of the Philippines at Los Baños. And he will be presenting to us again sustainability in the curriculum. Mr. Anasio, you have the floor.
There. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying with us until this time. This talk will be short reflection of how we can transition from sustainability in the curriculum to our sustainability as a culture. So we aim to go from SDGs to IKSPs in environmental education. IKSPs mean indigenous knowledge systems and practices. Basically, this is also a review of what the plenary session had been discussing earlier. So it would not be really new, although I'll be sharing a short story about how this idea came about. So this stems from a study conducted in Sagada, Northern Philippines, about a community ritual called the Bagnas. So the Bagnas is an agricultural ritual conducted regularly in the area in order to celebrate and mark an agricultural event in the community. Now, likening the event towards this discussion on education for sustainable development, I I want to allow us to see this event from the perspective of an audience and shifting it towards the perspective from the perspective of the participants of the event, meaning the community members. Now this analogy is, I'm putting forward this analogy to showcase the differences between how we educate sustainability from our end as educators and from living sustainable practices as a regular human being in our communities. Now, it's well known that here in the ASEAN region, we have an ASEAN Environmental Education Action Plan, which was the latest edition, would be covering the years 2014, 2018. And here in the Philippines, we have a National Action Plan for Environmental Education running until 2040. Now, reviewing these plans reveal that the focus of environmental education for sustainable development centers on the classroom setting. This is an important aspect of the approach, but it would be good for us to also focus on educating sustainability through other means apart from the classroom, which again was emphasized earlier during the plenary sessions. How can we do this? It would be through the extracurricular activities of students in the classroom. Again, this is not it is not about showing an alternative model to educate sustainability, but rather as another way or approach for educating our society members about sustainability. Now, one way and how this plays out can be seen in the creation of an culminating program. For example, here, we can see this stage design to be designed by the children themselves. And in doing so, you give the children free rein as to how the stage might look like, what specific plants to gather, and allowing the children themselves to do the activities involved in decorating this particular stage. Again, going back to my case in Sagada Mountain Province, this is a regular activity done by the elementary school administrators, although the picture I have here is not from that area. So what happens is, as children go to collect plants for the stage decorations, they get to be exposed to the different ecological conditions in the area. And that allows the children to be educated in a way about the processes, the dynamics of the ecosystems in which they live in. It also allows them to have exercise, allows them to move their bodies, which also makes them healthy in a way that is stemming from their interactions with the environment. In doing so, they get to appreciate what is important for the environment, which is basically about the integrity and the health of the ecosystems that they live in. So this is just one approach that we can put forward to help mainstream sustainability apart from what we formally offer in our educational institutions. So the main idea for this paper is for to go beyond formal environmental education for sustainability development, sustainable development, towards approaches of living with nature. So that means that it is it is important for us to focus on classrooms as well as other avenues for people to be educated. And that also means that our indicators for successfully implementing these programs would deviate from instruction-based assessments to participation-based outputs, meaning the participation of children, of learners in community activities, in various activities being conducted in the community would be given emphasis. And that would lead logically towards increasing sustainability in day-to-day practices. So it's not just about living or knowing what sustainability means, but gaining the idea of sustainability as your own indigenous knowledge, as your own practice, as your own way of life in the community. So that's the main idea of this paper that I hope has been made apparent through the story of the Bagnas in Sagada. And just to emphasize the image, wherein we try to discern the differences of the observer from the observed. This full colored picture would symbolize how we should be inculcating sustainability in our society, which is purely not just through our classrooms, educational institutions, but in participating in day-to-day activities in our communities. Thank you very much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anasio, for that very symbolic presentation and for the reminder that our practices should not be limited to the classroom, but also be continued in our own communities. Are there any questions or any sharings with regards to Mr. Anasio's presentations? The audience is again free to ask through the chat or by unmuting themselves. So everyone is still appreciating Mr. Anasio's slides where he showed the community life in Sagada. There is a comment here from the chat. Please elaborate on how we differentiate perspectives between the observed and the observer.
Yeah, the idea here is because we are talking about education for sustainable development. Usually the main approach would be the integration of technical lessons in the classroom setting. I'm not saying that this is not good. I'm just saying that for us to fully realize the range of how sustainability is being inculcated in our society is to also complement these approaches with participation in community life. So that's the analogy that I like to present, that we should not just be observers in particular events, mainly as being students receiving knowledge, technical knowledge in the formal setting, but also to be active participants in daily community life. So the idea there is you get to fully become immersed in these activities, in which as a side benefit, you would be exposed to various ecological principles in a way, although it's not being explicitly put forward to you. It's just that you get to experience it as compared to mainly just receiving it in a formal setting.
There's another question here. How do interactions with the community inform the ESD curriculum or learning experiences in the classroom? And how are these community experiences processed together with the students?
Yeah, using this approach is not the indicator for us to measure would be really different as compared to the classroom setting. So the processing of how this how did they learn from the experience is not the main goal, but rather the participation itself. So for example, in the community ritual that I have just mentioned, the participation of children in the planting of rice, in the collection of needed materials to prepare for the ritual, in participating in communal labor to feed the communities, in gathering food, in cooking food. That experience in itself is something that can be similar to what lessons you can get from the classroom. So for me, the assessment there, or the indicator for it to be successful is different. So it's not about it will not involve formally processing this the lessons learned with the learners, but rather the experience itself would lead to being aware of environmental conditions.
So I think that it's very challenging because now we're moving out of the classroom, and the typical assessments and processing we might need a little change of perspective for that. But thank you again for reminding us of how, again, we should not be only in the classroom, but also outside, Mr. Anasha. So I think if there are no more questions, that ends all the presentations for this afternoon session on the best practices in ecological education and culture. So thank you very much to all of our 4 presenters, Mr. Kampang, Professor Banaay, Dr. Nurul, and Mr. Anasio, and to our audience for your participation. I'm sure we have a lot to unpack from today's presentations about integrating ecology in our curriculum and our communities. And hopefully we will be able to apply and use the concepts we learned today as benchmarks in the context of our own institutions. So may I request a round of virtual applause to show our appreciation for today's presenters? Thank you very much again for all that you have shared with us this afternoon. Before we go our separate ways, may I request everyone to turn on your cameras for a group photo of our session group to be taken by Ms. Aleli from the Secretariat. So I think there are 38 participants. That's 2 slides. Ms. Aleli, please let us know.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, everyone. Please open all your
slides.
Yes, please. Okay, hold your smile, everyone. Okay, count to 1, 2, 3. Okay, next page, please. Next slide. And count to 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Miss Aleli, and everyone again for joining us this afternoon. Before we end, we have a few remarks, closing remarks from Dr. Maria Asunta Cuyeque, who has joined us in this afternoon's lecture presentations. She is the Executive Director of the AUN EEC. Let me share.
Hello, everyone. We hope you had a fruitful time during this session and the conference as a whole. On behalf of the Conference Secretariat, I would like to thank you for participating in the events today. We hope that the lecture and panel discussions gave you insights on what we can learn from those who came before us. From those who understood that they were part of the natural world and that their activities impacted not only the environment, but their own societies and resources. We hope that the lectures and panel discussion tomorrow will also inspire you to become engaged as citizens who will help define a more positive future. This afternoon was more focused on your interests. We hope that the session gave you ideas for your own work, as well as ideas for collaboration. Special thanks to Ms. Trinket Canlas for moderating this session. And to all the participants, thank you for making time for this session. As we end this conference, we invite you to join us in the future activities of the ASEAN University Network on Ecological Education and Culture. Stay safe and well. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
So thank you very much, Dr. Kuyegke, for those parting words for today. A few reminders for tomorrow's session. So for tomorrow's session, the plenary will begin at 9 a.m. as today, using the same plenary link that you used this morning. And please register for the breakout session should you wish to join for tomorrow. Tomorrow's workshop, please register today for tomorrow's workshop. Tomorrow's workshop has a maximum number of 30 participants, so please make sure that you register so that a slot is ensured. So that's it for our session this afternoon. That's a wrap. On behalf of the AUN EEC Conference Organizing Committee, I would like to thank everyone for your participation today, especially the presenters. Keep safe and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone.